Market to Market is everywhere you are. Subscribe to Market on YouTube, find us on the PBS video app to stream on demand, and add our 3 podcasts on your favorite podcasting app.
We started having the conversation with Leroy about how that transition might actually work because, as many of your listeners know, it's a very difficult thing, as you know, a very difficult thing to transition the farm and figure out how is the next generation going to be there when all of the value of the farm is in the farm. There is no 401k sitting there waiting for Leroy to go play golf in Florida. We have a lease with him so that he can afford to live comfortably in his golden years.
Transition is one thing. Transition to something non-traditional or what he was used to was a whole nother. Do you think that the biggest friction at first was that it wasn't the transition, it was the transition to what you and John had in your mind?
Well, I think it's both, because that handing over of power and being in a position where you've been in control of something, whatever it is, for 50 years, and all of a sudden you're going to take a back seat, is very scary, I think, to anybody. But yes, us doing something different, and especially me never having been living on a farm, having a good job somewhere else, was this actually going to even happen? Let alone like what we were proposing to actually do. So, I talk about in the book where he started asking us about what we were going to do. And I said, organics and, some very innocent things like organics and food grade grains. And he went out and got this hoe that had been left, it was like maybe an inch was left on it. And he said, this is what organics is, do you understand? Do you want to be laboring, battling weeds every day of your life? And I was taken back because did I really want to be battling weeds every day of my life? That was not something I probably actually wanted to do, but of course, that's not what organics really is anymore.
Right,
so.
And but again, it's that transitional, generational view of a topic, and the way someone comes from, this is the way I've done it.
Yes.
And I think this is what you're talking about, but in reality, we're somewhere in between.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the transition part because we're coming into the holidays, and we've had past episodes where we've talked about having that conversation about the transition. Is the holidays a good time to, so Mom, when do you think you're going to leave the farm? Or Dad, you done?
Yeah.
I mean, how did you approach it, and how would you do it differently now?
It's a very difficult conversation, and I think part of the problem is that nobody's that clear about what the legacy. They talk about that a lot in transition, when you go to a workshop, let's say, and you're like, let's get the legacy and what you want this farm to be down. And I think particularly when it's been a commodity growing farm, you function in such a year-to-year fashion, first off, and second of all, like, you haven't built a brand or something. The farm isn't an entity that is worth value or has a vision outside of like its corn suitability rating for the land. And so there is no vision. There is no like, what do we want in 10 years versus, let alone 100 years from now. And I think that is really where a family, you could have that conversation on just like, in 100 years from now, what would we want this to look like? And just having people, discuss it in a way that's maybe not like, are you done? I'm going to come. Are we ready to switch hands now? I'm ready to take over. But what do we all want this to be? And maybe there's not, then at least you would know, is there consensus in this group of people? Have we never even thought about it? Is it, or are we on completely different pages? Because that's important to know where you're starting.
And you're bridging gaps of people who are on and off the farm, out of the city, out of the state, maybe in some cases out of the country, but everybody's entitled to the same share. So sometimes you have to have coalition before you can go to the patriarch or matriarch of the family.
Yeah, I heard a story in my reporting time. I covered transition a bit, And there was a story about a guy who was 65 who had worked on the farm with his dad for 40 years or something at that point. The parents passed away and all the other siblings wanted to sell the farm. And he was just out of a job at 65 years old because he was the only one who wanted to keep the farm and couldn't afford to buy it for market rate. So yes, you have to build some kind of consensus, but also I think it's important to be questioning, like a lot of families just want to hold on to the land, period, full stop. Like we just want the farm. Why do we want the farm? Like what is that, could you keep 2 acres and have a cabin? And be able to go out there and have memories about what that was like, and then allow the land to transition to somebody who wants to be on it and farm it and care for it. Because in this state, in Iowa, we have more than 50% of the land is now rented out, most of that on 1-year leases. Why is the person who's renting the land going to care about how much fertilizer erodes off of the land, or how much chemical, input is affecting the bird life on the farm? It's just they don't, if you really care about the land, maybe keeping it is not the best thing for it.
Hoffman continues the discussion about the commodity treadmill, taking a new path in agriculture, and the experiences with government bureaucracy. The full discussion will be released Tuesday as part of the MTOM podcast.